tweet all this out. And we're live, right? Okay. I'm joined today by some fantastic guests, a sort of assortment of lovely left-wing people. I have with me today RaptrBlue, Cory Johnston, Angie Moon, and Teglin. How are you all today?
Doing amazing.
Doing well.
Doing well.
Fantastic. Excellent. And it's quite interesting because, recently I started a degree degree in sociology. And in this degree, we're sort of encouraged to, think about the world from many perspectives and think about the many different angles to which you can approach a situation. And so I'm in a very lucky position to be able to call upon people and actually bring them together for a chat about something which is a massive socio-political event on the horizon. And that event, sadly, is something that we're not going to be able to ignore because of the ramifications of the election, the US decision really between two parties of a major political standing, and the consequences almost of either party taking control in November or next year rather. So I wanted to throw open the discussion really just from the start of how we're all feeling about it, what our thoughts are about this big event, and it's open for anyone to begin.
Okay, well, you know what? I'll go ahead because I was just reading up on it. I was just reading up on it, honestly. Like, look, I can't say that I'm not slightly nervous that Trump might win. There's a possibility he's going to. Now, I'm going to drink the hopium and go like, nah. See any of his recent rallies or anything? He's using the weave or whatever he calls it, and he's just rambling. He also just recently came out against video games, so we got to ban violent video games, in fact. So, like, he just lost the gamer demographic. So there is all of that. And the problem is, though, when you talk to these people who enjoy Trump for whatever they are, they struggle to, like, connect things in their head in regards to his policies, in regards to his thoughts, in regards to, like, his opinions. And there's just so much disinformation that he himself is pumping out there about his beliefs and his history that it leads to that confusion.
Yeah. Go on, Cory. What were you going to say?
I was actually initially just going to say, I'll let the Americans discuss it first because it impacts them more directly than it impacts me.
Angie's like, what do we think?
Like, it's kind of weird for me because in a way I'm from the United States. I'm from Chicago originally, but I've lived most of my adult life outside of the US. And for every single presidential election, as long as I've been an adult and able to vote, I've actually been out of the country every single time. So in 2012, I was in Canada. 2016, I was in Ireland. 2020, I was also in Ireland. And then 2024, here I'm in England. So I've never voted in any US presidential election. The only time I ever voted in the US was during a primary, and that was for Bernie Sanders. And then we all know how that turned out, and that in a way, I kind of spiritually died after that. Kind of like how Phil Oakes did in 1968. That's exactly how I felt. And yeah, I don't like either party. I don't want anyone to win. I just don't like anyone. It's awful. It just makes me very depressed.
It is a very depressing thing. As an American here, I'm going to say that.
And what about you, Teglin? What's your gut feeling coming into this?
It's been interesting watching the debates and seeing Republicans come out with some of the same language we saw with Sarah Palin, drill, baby, drill. And just completely ignoring all the evidence regarding climate. And now we're seeing these hurricanes. So it's really bringing climate change more on people's minds. But I don't feel like it's being discussed enough in the debates or in the campaign.
Yeah, it's frightening, isn't it? Like, I think the fact that you've got this event happening at the same time as so many other things happening in the world right now, especially something as this, as well as a hurricane, like is so scary, right? And so just devastating to actually see happen. And then, as you say, Teglin, at the same time as that, you've got people just like denying the root cause of it, right? Like denying the science that gets behind it, or even weaponizing that science to claim there's like hurricane machines and intentional like defunding of federal bodies to actually help people in these crises.
Not just defunding, but also like attempting to spread more misinformation regarding it. Like
exactly right,
saying that, oh yeah, the FEMA is keeping us from sending in rescue helicopters, even though there are a lot of organizations under FEMA and they are all trying to communicate and work together to, you know, get people out of an emergency situation.
Yeah, no, indeed, right? Like it's so infuriating that in 2024, like I remember as a kid, like when you're in school and you're learning about the climate and geography, and just like all this information's there for you, and you think, wow, you know, it's so great having the internet and being able just to find out more about anything. Like in your textbook, you can just go onto your computer and learn something. What a great future we've got. And now here we are, like with people spreading the most inane or not even convincing lies. I mean, I can't imagine ever in any point in my life thinking a hurricane machine exists and it's pointed at red states to kill voters who don't vote for the party. It's like it's beyond like megalomaniacal, right? And yet
Jewish space lasers.
It's terrible. Like, and I would love to just sit and laugh about it all, but there's a very good chance that the people who spread this stuff will be like in the White House, right, and getting to write policy for 4 more years.
It feels like the movie Idiocracy, but just come to life. And I didn't know it would come in like less than 20 years since that movie came out. That was supposed to be 500 years in the future.
And like you said, Raptor, right? Like linking the two together, you know, Trump just he's almost like not like cogent. I say it. He was never cogent. He was never an amazing public speaker. But
he's tried to monetize or not monetize. Try to spread the idea he has to weave where like all his ideas are just constantly weaving together. But actually, listen to him. He makes no fucking sense. Like there's nothing going on there. He's just yapping.
He's like. It almost feels like because the Republican Party was dying, unpopular. Trump comes in, that rallies up a load of fascists. There's a far right surge behind him, right? And so the party hinges itself on his brand and his like, oh, we're the Trump party. We're going to beat the Democrats and change America and make America great again. And they've attached themselves to Trump. And as his mind starts to falter, and he just sort of, as you say, just stammers out whatever he comes up with on the day and doesn't really have anything proper to say beyond the usual sort of asinine talking points. Like it's clear that, as you say, like as you watch him, he's just not altogether there. But at the same time, there's this movement behind him, which is actively trying to boot people off the voting ballots, trying to stop people from even being registered to vote, trying to fix electoral processes so that Republicans are almost guaranteed to have favorable conditions. You've got Elon Musk actively engaging in electoral malpractice with his billions behind him. Like there's so much like negative energy and active machinations like designed to get the Republican Party to win.
Like actively undermining our processes.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's terrifying.
And absolutely it is. It absolutely is. And there's nobody stepping in to actually like rectify this and try to fix it, because this is a like first that ever actually happened under our system, that it's just so blatant and open, which shows that we need to fix it. We are 250 years out of date using a system built on slavery to keep people from color from voting. Because they were afraid that we would somehow overpopulate everywhere else because they viewed us as animals. Like it's time to update that a little bit, you know.
And that's the frustrating thing, right? Like I mean, like Angie says, you've got the main opposition to this openly fascist party that really, whilst there's in my mind, there's no question that if I have to pick between the two, I clearly want Kamala Harris over Donald Trump. But this party sit there and for years now, decades, they've allowed America to drift further and further right and not addressed the massive societal problems, or not even attempted to. Because like we as leftists know that there's a main problem with capitalism, right? The main underlying fault of American society is the same fault that's in most Western nations, right?
Does anyone disagree here? Does anyone disagree? There are a couple times where I've been in these conversations and they've disagreed.
It's a fair point, right? I mean, perhaps we can get Dave on from the other night. Raptor, he might he might disagree. But no, like there's a clear societal problem, but there's a party which, as with many neoliberal, like centre-right organisations, are content to sit on their hands and hope that things will just sort of smooth themselves out and ignore the massive fascist uprising brewing in their backyard. Like they've had so many opportunities to fix voting registration, voter ID laws, gerrymandering, disenfranchisement, mass incarceration, and there's not enough done. In some cases, they go along with it, and they almost expect, like, I'm not saying it's every Democrat, because there's absolutely some states where they fight really hard and 100% improve things in their things. But there's so many cases.
Minnesota. Like, talking about bring up Dave. Minnesota. Tim Wolf.
So do we all know who we're talking about when we say Dave? It occurs to me that Dave is quite. Dave, otherwise known as Lord of Patriarchy, is a very right-wing YouTuber who I spoke to very recently.
That's a person who wants to be taken seriously?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly, right? For better or worse, I quite enjoy having these conversations with, as well as lovely people like yourselves, also quite right-wing people. And one of them is a particularly shouty man called Dave, who's firmly swung into the Trump camp and loves everything that he says, even as he professes to be a centrist and to be rational and to be all of this.
Look, anybody who comes, I'm gonna come out here and definitely say this. Anyone who claims to be a centrist is just a lib. It is just someone who wants the status quo to continue onward because it doesn't inconvenience them in any way.
I always say that a centrist is just a right winger without the courage of their convictions.
Hell yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Well, exactly right. You've got I think the frustrating thing that I think a lot of people have with liberals is that there's all this like conversation about like equality and justice and how the system's going to help everyone in the end and everything's going to be all right. And they may genuinely believe that, but tangibly in practice, that's not the case, right? The American system, as with many European nations, of any Western capitalist country, isn't doing enough to address the material problems that our world is facing. And so it swings the door open for. Sorry, Angie, go ahead.
Whatever left-wing parties or whatever excuse that the U.S. or a lot of European countries have for them, they have no teeth. They're just a centrist party. So, like, when I was hearing the definition of centrist, I was like, yeah, that's describing the left-wing parties. I'm doing air quotes on the video right now, but yeah, that's what I'm putting around left-wing. But yeah, I mean, it's just so disappointing. And then I hate the smug attitude that some of the supporters have, that they just act so smug and just paternalistic, and it's turning people off. And it's definitely worsening the fascism problem that we have and the polarization and just the divisiveness. I think definitely some of the rhetoric they use is just very polarizing and just, it isn't connecting with people, and they need to do what works and what connects with people and just focus on the issues. That's really what's important. This is what it's all about. It's about the issues. It's about freedom.
I mean, also calling Republicans weird. That was very effective.
Yeah, like addressing the fact that fascists aren't popular would go and doing things opposite to what the far right want would work massively, right? Like instead of pouring money into more policing and a bigger army, put money into healthcare, transport, education, and the things that people use and interact with on a regular basis, lifting them up would immediately improve people's lives, give them more time to enjoy the fruits of a massively wealthy economy. And because for as much as I think one of the really frustrating things is there's clearly, and each time there's a Democrat in charge of America, things are better than under Republicans, right? There's for as much as like they aren't good enough, they do genuinely do things better than Republicans do, because ultimately, when you're further left wing than you are right wing, like you're going to be better than like George W. Bush.
You tend to be more correct as well.
Exactly,
back
right?
on your side, yeah.
But they undermine it by it's almost like they're afraid to actually take the next step and say, well, actually, why are we considering the charade of like conservative politics and pretending that like we can be tough on immigration and that's going to have any actual benefit for like the average person? Like they could do things right now that would massively improve people's lives, but because they follow the capitalist doctrine so closely, the right-wing playbook and stuff, they don't do any of it, and then wonder why people get so disenfranchised. Like you say, Angie, right? Like I saw a photo of it was the world leaders: Macron, Schrader, Starmer, and Biden, and it's so disheartening because in each of those countries,
really just ruined everything was just the corporate influence in politics and all this big money.
Yeah,
and
the ability to
think about, like, these politicians are bought and paid for. And I just wish that we could just like have all the people that have bought them just displayed on their suits. Like they'd look like NASCAR. That's what it would look like in there. It's just insane how just corporate control, how
lobbyists, super PACs, all that definitely ruined a lot of how American politics worked. But that's how our system was incentivized for a long time anyway. Like it was not meant for the common person to have an opinion.
Yeah.
They wanted you to be Christian. They wanted you to be a landowner. They wanted you to be white. Like that's just the truth of the situation. And like I said, the system is 250 years out of date. It's still like it needs to be updated, but people are too scared of fixing it because they want to, I don't know, preserve the legacy of America or whatever.
Yeah, like you've got that
legacy.
Yeah, exactly. No, fuck that. Like it needs to fix itself.
Like I'm all for like the pop culture stuff. That's cool. But like, what legacy does America have as a country? What
literally none. Literally none that isn't based in like slavery,
colonialism,
and
ruthless capitalism. Like genuinely, it's
pretty
awful,
much.
Right?
Like,
but like it's frustrating because like you've got. I think it's so important, Raptor, to look at the history of the country, like you say, right? Like the country built by slave owners, got wealthy through slavery. American capitalists and corporations, like you say, Angie, put their money everywhere and trash and ransack any like utility they can. Let's put a corporation there and try and turn it into a profitable venture. And so, having to interact with like politics and anything through this like corrupt, broken system is so frustrating and so like disheartening, right? Like looking at this election is miserable. But we have to, because the same like fascist like threat also is there, also is about to, like if they win the election, it's like they have the tools to this big machine that they can put to criminalizing LGBTQ people, furthering the police state and weaponization of stuff against Black Americans and beyond that, the global South and reinstate harmful policies against women and other non-masculine, non-patriarchal expectations. Like it's terrifying.
Yeah, it is. And then like I said, like I'm scared of it, but at the same time, when it's presented that way, you get a lot more people who are reactive to that and go like, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't vote Republican. But at the same time, you do get the Republicans who go like, well, what have the Democrats done? And that's why I've always said the Democrats really need to up their game and be like the radical social Marxists that they are painted as the entire time, all the time. Because then they'll win. They'll keep winning if they do that.
Even if they just do half of that, even if they just were just half as socialist, I still think like there'd be a reason to vote for them. And the problem is what the Democrats do is that they'll just blame the voters rather than, they need to look at themselves. The problem is inside themselves. They need to go to the mirror and look at that mirror because that's who the problem is. The person looking back at you.
Yeah.
And they just need to just do things that are popular. Just give people a reason to vote for you. It's like, it reminds me of YouTubers who blame the viewers. Oh, you're not watching my videos. Like, make better content.
Quite literally be more entertaining, please. is a good way to put it.
That's like the one thing that Trump did have back in 2016. He was entertaining. He was funny. Like that was really the selling point of him. He's funny, and I think in a weird way witty. Just in a weird way, but yeah, in his own way he was witty.
I mean, like coming off of that Obama charisma, people were still kind of like, we're still looking for the outsiders because before Obama's era, nobody knew who Obama was. We kind of had a rough idea who Trump was, but they only knew him through propaganda or like The Apprentice. So I'm like, oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think you'd only know Obama if you were from Illinois, because I think I heard his name before that, but I'm from Illinois, so.
Yeah, see? Like I had no idea when I voted initially. who I'm going, oh, but I was also deeply ingrained in like black culture at the time. And it was literally just like, oh yeah, dude, one of us. We're fucking, we can vote. Shit. There were straight up parties election night. All right. I'm just saying. But also like we had 4 years of Trump. So we kind of aware of how or who Trump is now, which is a big kind of factor. He's no longer an outsider. He's no longer like a mystery candidate. We know who he is. We know what he's done, which is not a whole lot, honestly, because he was just riding on the coattails of Obama era policies. And then when it came to him having to make his own, he just continued to write horrific ones that never passed. Except for the stimulus check, which happened.
Yeah. But like you say, sorry, finish off. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, good. I was just yapping.
No, not at all. No word said in this is going to be a yap. No? Every word counts. But no, Angie, like you say, right? Like the Democrats, saw Trump and saw this man who, despite being a billionaire, despite being very clearly just a rich man gaming a system to get more power and write laws that let his businesses steal more money, right? Like, despite all that, they thought, oh, let's put Hillary Clinton up against him, right?
Yes.
Hillary, who,
oh my God, that, yeah, sorry.
Like, just
her entitlement,
an atrocious campaign, a really bad campaign.
Hillary Clinton was the ultimate Karen, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, no, she was totally entitled.
Yep.
She was totally entitled for the entire process.
And
like that's the problem with our. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Because we have political dynasties. What I was going to bring up was we have the fact that we have political dynasties in America, where it's presented that anyone can be anything, anyone can be president, but then we just have the Kennedys, we just have the Clintons, we just have the Obamas now, we just have that's all we have now.
The Bushes, the
Bushes. Yeah.
We kicked out the British for a reason. Why are we doing this all over again?
Because we never learned. We never learned our lesson.
Right, it's those right-wing power structures still in place, right? And
I think
at the heart, in that Democrat Party, you've got a lot of people who want change, right? There's lots of people in that party who want progressive ideals right at the heart of American society and a transformed economy, transformed public infrastructure. But you've also got people who basically still exist in like an 80s, 90s sort of bubble where you beat the Republicans by adopting some right-wing policies and having the mantra of, being tough on immigrants, like doing right-wing politics better than Republicans can do. And that's how you get...
One thing to remember about Hillary, she still got more votes than Trump did.
That is true as well. Even with all the stuff, a fair system would have given her the presidency anyway, right?
Is there any other part of the world that does that electoral college thing? Because I can't think of another country that does that.
No, we are the only one that does. We have ones that have like kind of quasi electoral colleges, but it's mostly just like rich people.
Yeah, I think most other countries are parliamentary systems rather than the U.S. style. But
I want it to be more than a two-party system. Like, that's the thing. Can we just even get like a third or fourth party in there? We need more parties, definitely.
Though I suppose putting our leftist hats on, the argument I suppose would be that the capitalist organization of democracy is intended for a way to slow the movement of progress, to allow capital to have time to react to electoral changes. And so if, say, a left-wing movement for change arrives, there's time to slow down the gears of process and put layers in place to stop a massive tax increase suddenly coming for corporations, and say, well, actually, let's hold this down. Let's slow it down. Let's go back to the primaries. Let's have a few states. Let's put our voting system into the electoral college and let states decide, and have enough states with Republican leaning areas so that this never comes to pass.
There's always a threat of Republicans winning. Yeah.
I mean, because like you say, like you've got literally the college forming to give the slave states enough of a swing in government to be able to maintain, slave ownership, and literally having to. I think what really frustrates me in America is that you've got this country built on white supremacy that had a civil war over slaves. The free states won, which the Union won. They beat the Confederacy. They signed the amendment. I can't remember which amendment it is. It was not
there was a lot. There was a lot. It was 13th, but yeah.
There we are. Yes, of course, it's 13th Amendment, end slavery, apart from apart from in cases of prison.
Yeah, unless you're in jail. Then enslavement is fine.
Not just prison. Literally, if you were just commit a crime and get sent to jail, you can be a slave.
Yeah.
Fun times there. You sign that, you have Jim Crow, and you get the Civil Rights Act and Civil Rights Movement to do more and end segregation. And yet still the mechanism in place to keep these things going is still largely there. The Southern strategy was enabled, the means of consolidating right-wing white supremacist power around the Republican Party, let them shore up the entire Deep South. You know, when was the last time Alabama saw Democrats able to do anything, or Tennessee, right?
The last one I saw was Georgia, and they're trying to fix the Georgia election before the big day, right? So that only Republicans can win.
And it's infuriating because all this is happening, and there's all this, like we can all see this, right? It's not subtle, it's not some conspiracy, it's just out in the open, like electoral fixing. And yet the Democrats plod along like it's just, come and vote for us, guys, on election day. That's like, no, like where's the radical? Actually, you guys are cheats. We're gonna put some things in place to stop this from happening. Like where's the movement to actually stop this from happening, or make things fairer? Like you believe, if you are liberal, you believe in the process of democracy as it exists. Well, here's some people who literally tried to stage a coup last time when they lost. Like, what are you doing?
Not just one coup, several coups, and still lost. Because it wasn't just all of them at once. It was literally state by state. They went like, you know what? We're going to join the Confederacy. And they still lost.
And I think one thing, like Teglin, that I think you've mentioned before, when I've read your social media and stuff, like what really irks me is that as well, on top of all the like obvious chicanery, a natural disaster hitting and actively shutting down parts of the state is a massive, a legitimate, complete, even beyond politicization, an incentive to say, actually, we need to do something to change how voters register, to change how we vote, because there's millions of people now who are going to be like lives disrupted, displaced from registering, unable potentially even to get to the ballot boxes and do their early voting, whatever. We've got to do something. And I've seen you tweet about environmental issues and stuff. Like, what's your opinion on that side of it? Because is there, do you think, more Democrats could do to, on that front, even within the corrupt and broken system they have, to actually say, okay, we've got to do something to fix a major breach of democracy here?
Oh, that's a great question.
Personally, I would say yes. Sorry, Tegan, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just think that there's natural disaster. You would think people would look at that and say, yeah, we need to affect changes. But, Naomi Klein has written about this in the book, The Shock Doctrine, that like with Katrina and just various natural disasters have been turned on their head and used as a way of pushing a neoliberalism agenda. And in Katrina, in the case of Hurricane Katrina, it was to privatize the schools. And it seems like that's what always happens.
Yeah, like it's so infuriating that Republicans almost seize on these moments quicker than Democrats and sort of supposedly left-leaning, to borrow your air quotes, Angie. They're quicker to say, oh, the Democrats have stolen your money that you need, at the same time as privatizing like all the institutions that would actually help in a situation like that, right? Like they claim that Democrats have taken your money and given it to immigrants or foreign aid or whatever, at the same time as getting rid of regulations that stop what's it called when you raise the price of like water, say
inflation or
price
like
gouging?
Price gouging, that's it. Yeah. But they'll make it really easy for the corporations and like private businesses to really wreck the economy, like in favor of them at the expense of like the most needy, like desperate people in a major disaster. Like, right. And then like, that's the clear issue. And then we'll say, no, the problem is actually feeding some refugee. Like,
so quick question. No shade on anybody. Who here's lived through natural disasters?
Fortunate enough not to.
Okay.
No.
The UK is quite mild where
that's
the places
true.
I've lived.
Yeah, I've lived through 3, so they're deeply traumatizing events for like a kid at the time, and then one as an adult. But like how it's one of those things where it's viewed as like this not distant issue, but almost something that can be sensationalized in the United States. You have these storm chasers, they are out there, in the storm, and tons of people are watching them instead of gathering actual facts as to what is going on and what can help. And then you have charities who scalp off a ton of money when you donate. So there are many ways you can actually fix this. And one way for Democrats is to engage in mutual aid.
Yeah.
That is a big thing, because instead of having these effectively corporations running charities, what the Democrat can do, a politician or like governor or whatever, could be out there and going, hey, this is the amount of money I'm putting down to help get supplies out there. I am going out there and helping, like actually engaging with the disaster instead of leaving. Because under the Trump presidency, there were 2, 3 natural disasters. You had the hurricane in the Caribbean, which I was there for, and I was helping out and I was engaging in mutual aid. The one where he drew on the map. If you guys remember that one.
Yep.
2, you had the flash freeze in Texas, where
Ted Cruz left.
Yeah, where Ted Cruz tried to leave and came back 2 days later and threw his wife and children under the bus. What was the last one? Was it heat wave? No, I mean it was COVID, obviously, but there was another one as well with and I want to say it was a heat wave, and I think it was in Portland, where Portland just was not ready for it, and stuff was melting in Portland. Yeah. And then COVID, obviously, where he defunded the pandemic response unit, and we were having a 9/11 every day for months, like in terms of death, and nobody cared, because I mean, especially over here, it's easy to forget that people are suffering around you when your own needs aren't met. And that's a big thing, is that when you vote, you can just vote and forget, because there's no guarantee that the person you vote for is going to enact change right away to fix the immediate issues in your life.
Yeah, that's why I mean, it's been multiple years now where I've been very like, do not attack people who don't vote blue no matter who, kind of thing, because
I'm still gonna attack them.
Too often people, they just like, it doesn't really benefit them to vote one way or the other. They've got to go, their lives are the same. They have to struggle, they have to pay the bills, they have to go to work 2-3 jobs no matter what, right? And then you say with the natural disasters, both parties tend to undermine the mutual aid actions that communities do for each other. And it seems like, usually it's the mutual aid groups, it's your neighbors, it's your community that's going to respond quickest to the disaster. And then they send in the military or the police, and they end up shooting innocent people. And
there's that. What was another big one I was thinking of? I just had it in my head too. Not just mutual aid. Oh, well, I'll let somebody else talk for a second.
I
just had it and I forgot what it was.
About in this discussion is that, like, I had a classmate in Ireland who said that things, run by the government, public services, should be run like a business. And then me and this classmate of mine who are left wing were just calling him out on it. Like, no, that's bad. Why does everything have to make a profit? Yeah. Like, the government, that's not what it should be about. It's about the greater good.
It's supposed to be services for the people who need them, not business making profits.
And it's so frustrating, right? Because at every point right-wing people right-wing organizations love to talk about the merits of capitalism, and capitalism did all these amazing things, blah blah. Like, at every point that humanity got better and society started moving forward, humans worked together and collaborated. Like, the reason we're able to do this, right, and connect, is that humans move beyond what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours, let's fight because we're all different, blah, blah. Like, actually, we're all human beings, we only have needs that are better, like society's bettered when our needs are met. And so like you look at the greatest periods of development and improvement, they're all in the last 150 years or so, where you have the beginnings of proper democracies and welfare state, and the ends to the times of serfdom and slavery and fiefdom and kingdoms and absolute monarchies, and the beginning of democracies and of workers' rights and of the actual like building blocks to living in, you know, nice societies. And of course, that's we will live in the West, we will benefit from the structures that have put Western nations on top. But it's not as though people haven't also had these ideas in other parts of the world. Like, it's not as though someone in, I don't know, Nigeria, bad example because that's a fairly wealthy country, but like it's not as though someone in the global South is unable to think of those things. But the structures that are in place, you know, put our nations on top, right? And so it's important for us not only to look, as you say, beyond the party politics of this team or that team, and try and think of a world where we are helping each other, and be that on your doorstep or the global community. There's that imperative drive to actually put ourselves going forward and put ourselves in the hands of others and help each other, right? And that makes for a better world. And when I really cited that, as so many do, you know, look what you get. You get chicane, you know, scumbag politicians using any opportunity to promote a cause, right? Ted Cruz, my God.
One thing a lot of these like these organizations or whatever need to do, like we need to, much like I said, remove capitalism from it, remove the money incentive from it. These programs just need to make ends meet and be cost effective, and there should be like socialized in a way that is different than a business. But everyone thinks that business is the only way to run things for some reason. It's that old phrase that it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is to imagine the end of capitalism.
Yeah, it's capitalist realism, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot more services need to be universal. Like, a lot of money is wasted on means testing. And means testing often creates this perverse incentive not to do better. Because, oh, I don't want to get this raise, because then I'll go over the threshold and then I'll lose my benefits. Or I don't want to get this promotion, I don't want to get this job. And it just holds people back from succeeding. I'm like, things need to be universal, so that way everybody's got them. And there's a reason for all of us to protect it. You know, because it is really about all of us.
Right. But that stands in direct opposition to the right-wing principles that sort of both undermine and underlie our society, right? Like make profit, search for more capital, search for power over others, get to the top of a hierarchy. Like, that is, be it explicitly spoken or, you know, intuitively felt by so many within politics and in society at large, that it's hard to get people to see that goal, Angie. Like, it's hard to get people to, not even just get them to, hard to even get them to think, like you said, Raptor, that more can be done beyond just, oh, is this profitable? But I don't care. Like, I think what really, not to bring up Dave again, but the reason there's like so many people like him is because so much of media is so right wing, right? It runs on the same logics and literally has to make a profit, so it goes for profitable things and has the same generic actors, like person performing societal function, has the same political voices on, and so the conversation is always very coordinated around the same few topics with the same sound bites, and no one believes that progress is possible. So everyone's glum and miserable and starts acting selfishly, and that's how you get to people standing around with guns outside shops in disaster, trying to shoot people who are desperate and starving and need food, or believing
not just people, also cops.
Yeah, of course, right? And that's the other side of it, right? Like the role of a right-wing state in the state, as it adopts further right-wing ideas, thinks that property matters more than people, and so deploys its armed forces to quite literally shoot the starving, right?
Yeah.
Starving, desperate, destitute, like they lose everything. One of the things to remember is that, like, viewing through the lens of equity, a blue collar worker needs more help than a millionaire, because the blue collar worker does not have the same assets as a millionaire, as somebody who has several houses or anything does. and it's easy to find this stuff out, but first you need to get them out of the emergency situation. Handle the immediate needs first, and then work on the rest when you have time. In fact, that would even create jobs. Who would have guessed?
Right. And like these problems are so interconnected too, right? Because if you have invested in your society, like if you put money that is, or like resources that are generated by society back into society, you have an infrastructure like transport systems which aren't, broken, so people can actually use trains and roads to move around and not just clog up one motorway and get stuck for ages trying to leave a dangerous zone. Maybe you have better welfare support so that people aren't having to work endless jobs and can't leave an active danger zone, because if they lose their source of income, then they've lost their place of living anyway, right? Because the landlord says, well, your rent's gone, eviction day, time to go.
Get out of here. Yeah. Yep.
Like, it's terrifying that there's so many ways, like we all said, that can be like improved to make the next, because obviously some places are going to be hit by disasters, right? The nature of living, humans tend to live by coastlines and waterways. They tend to flood, especially in places like the east coast of America. So, Florida is a peninsula. It's going to have some tricky times, but humans have the tools to make places which are quite tricky livable. So why not share resources?
Yeah, there's like a thing going around with people that I talk to. Like Cuba deals with the same hurricanes that Florida does, but consistently has fewer issues with helping its population. There may be issues with Cuba in the way they run their government, but they have a people first mentality rather than a profit first mentality. And it shows in the results of how things go.
But we did this to go back to my education again, my school times. We did this in school. Like you compare earthquakes in first world countries versus third world countries. Japan has very powerful earthquakes. They're devastating, but they put money back into their social infrastructure so that the next earthquake isn't quite as deadly. Countries that are really right wing and just believe the free market will solve it, or more accurately, don't care because it's not going to turn a profit to put money back into social whatever, don't learn the lessons and let more people die the next time because they're uninterested in improving society. Yeah. Like it's infuriating that these. I keep using that word, infuriating
mentality, because they're always like, oh well, if we shouldn't cure cancer because it's not fair to the people who've already died of cancer. It's
spite politics. Spite politics. Oh my God. Same reason why people are now crushed under student loan debt and are so angry about other people getting it forgiven, because it's literally, well, I had to suffer, why don't you also suffer? Instead of trying to fix the problem and the predatory loans and like the systemic issues, and offer this to everybody, regardless of who you are, with like maybe a little bit of a litmus test or a little bit of like a gatekeeping test, just in case. And that's me being generous to just not giving people, or to those people, and saying maybe not everyone should go to college. And that's not even what I believe in the first place. I believe everyone should have the right to education.
100%.
Surprise! It turns out we all have, like in America, really bad education compared to almost everywhere else in the first world. Much like everything else. But hey, you know what? U.S. is number one in COVID deaths and prison population.
Yeah. That's how you measure success, right?
Exactly, right? It's number one.
Disposable. That's really what it is. They don't want to invest in us. They just treat us as disposable, and that's why, they're okay. Like, open borders is really more of a right-wing policy, because it's just exploiting people from poor countries and taking advantage of people whose governments, the U.S. is overthrown and destabilized and everything. And, they cause problems, then it's just domino effect. And then they try to give you fake solutions that don't even work. It's
well, what did Trump say before? What did Trump say as he was running? I can't remember if it was this year or earlier this year. Or earlier than this year, where he's straight up saying he's just running on problems, not solutions.
Sounds about right.
I genuinely think he said that at the end of his presidency, is that he's going to run on problems and not solutions, and then just created problems so he can run on trying to fix them.
The culture war. That's really what it's all about.
It's embarrassing. Like they're not. There's no one left in that party interest. Like because you might obviously very very wrong before, but like you get right-wing people who like, oh, I believe that genuinely if we just don't tax these corporations and minimize the pressures we put on them, they'll
fix everything.
A boom, right? Exactly. Yeah. But they'll still believe in like treating people well, and they don't want people to they want to have they don't believe in the hateful stuff. They're really conservative and a bit traditional and stuff. But they're not running the party anymore. Now it's just like Marjorie Taylor. What's that? I've always
Marjorie Taylor. Yeah, MTG. Yeah. Marjorie Taylor.
Yeah, people like that who just are actively insipid, awful, spiteful human beings who do nothing but like they only own party to say, oh, the Democrats did this, and we hate that because it's leftist and gay. We're going to end that, and that's all they say and do. And we all touched on it.
Then I don't mean to interrupt you. What they've been doing now recently is pushing it even further by saying, "Oh yeah, they're pedophiles." They're being anti-Semitic, genuine anti-Semitism, where they're going like they're Jews, they're controlled like by the Jewish cabal or whatever. Like it boils down into the concept of are they right and white? Is how I phrase it sometimes.
Genuinely disgusting. Like, I mean, the fact as well that like just the pedophile thing is really galling because it cheapens the actual abuse that genuinely happens in so many places. Often right-wing ones where there's no sex education and no like funds for school governance to actually step in and say, "Oh, these parents are a little bit questionable." Like you've got people in the Republican Party actually, by the way, who don't believe in like abuse as we understand it existing. So they just think that just be able to hit your kid and send them off to gay re-education camp, like to beat the gay out of them and all those horrible things, like and putting them in charge of education like as they want to, a Project 2025. It genuinely, like of all the things, there's so many awful things, and like, I think ranking them isn't the way to go about it. But that one really like strikes a chord with me because like as someone who like works in education and like had like seen and read and heard really not very nice things, like for that to be the mantra of parents are always right, kids need to learn and step into line and just listen to whatever they say, is just carte blanche to let abusers enforce really awful conservative values onto vulnerable people. Like it's terrifying.
Yeah, and it's also built on like just a purely nonsense and like absence of any analysis of reality, because it's usually people in power or people that know kids who abuse them, right? So like cops, priests, coaches, these are the people that you have to worry about, not trans people or gay people on the internet.
People with authority. Yeah, people with authority. I mean, some people on the internet, all right? A weird amount of YouTubers are into young kids.
For sure.
I don't know why that's it, but that is a thing. It doesn't have to happen a lot. It has to happen enough for me to go, what is
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Well, that's the power structure too, right?
Here.
Like that's a form of power too, right? Because they're like these like YouTubers get parasocial relationships and they have all this suddenly, that you can go from like 1,000 viewers to like 1 million viewers quite quickly compared to old forms of media. They have always power. They have lots of young, impressionable people suddenly like watching their stuff, and maybe they want to get closer and stuff. And rather than maintain professionalism and sort of act like a decent person, a lot of them will be like, oh, well, why not do whatever I want? And it's not a coincidence that the same structures of power exist in other places too, right? Like as we've said, often those power structures corrupt the mind, and if they go unchecked, as Republicans and right-wing people want to basically let them, just as like unquestioned power, that allows abusers to just have free reign to do what they like, right? Who's going to question them if they've got the power to shut out any other body, right? If you want to change how schools run so that a parent can just say, we want this taught, we don't want any sex ed taught, we don't want any mention of any other like way of life apart from what we say, we're always right. And if you do what we don't say, then we can now vote to axe off the teachers and sack the principal and put in some like, I don't know, clergyman who's from the same church as us in to run the school. Like
or veterans. That's another.
Yeah.
They're trying to do that one now too. They're trying to put veterans as substitute teachers.
Just an absolute abysmal, one of the worst policies I've ever read. Yeah, just or ever been aware of. Just the way they want to. In fact, they don't even believe in education as a human right. They want to end the Department of Education and end the ability of the state to put money into inner city schools, basically because they believe that poor kids should be mini workers, right? They don't believe in. I mean, you have to look at in states like Florida, right, where they've got rid of labor protections on kids. So now, if you're 16, you can get full hours at a factory, slogging away like anyone else. They don't believe in people having the tools to engage in society. They want people in their place, and if you're not one of them, then off to the factory you go. Make us the next phone.
There's that one. There's the fact that kids. I think it was. I can't remember where it was exactly. It was in the South. I know that. But where kids could work 6 hours in a meat factory overnight.
Awful.
The children crave the mines. Apparently, we're going back to that mentality.
Yeah. In what way are you protecting kids if you're putting them to work in meat cutting facilities?
Look, their tiny hands can fit into the gear. Okay, that way we don't need mechanics to come in and take everything apart. We can just put a child in there, and they can reach what we can't.
Horrifying, right? And I would be extra. Sorry, go ahead, Raptor.
I said I couldn't finish that without laughing.
Yeah. And the added extra level of awfulness is that the South has the most African Americans, black people, right? There's so many black people in that part of the world, and so many really right wing. Not even just that, active white supremacists who are still cross that slavery ended and that they had to lose the Civil War and had to end Jim Crow because the government told them to. They want nothing more than to take it all over, undo everything, and though they might call it something else, they might not say openly that they want slavery back. They put the things in place to essentially recreate that dynamic, right?
It is definitely a Southern strategy in effect. It's literally the busing phrase all over again. You're on YouTube, so I can't repeat it 100%. But it's the further you have to eventually start abstracting to the point where you just write in the most vague ways when you actually mean black people or minorities in general.
Yeah.
And they're really, they're very two-faced about it too, because lots of these right-wing media types will say, "Oh, the Southern strategy never happened," and they'll come up with all these lies about all the things they want to do and are doing, but because they know it's unpopular and despised, they have to coax their way through, right? It's when when they bring up Project 2025, they're all clear. Oh no, that's not really Trump. That's not really Republicans. That's just a few people. We're not doing that.
Uh-oh.
Right as they're endorsing every single awful thing listed in that movement. It's they know what they're doing, but they're seriously unserious people, and also a big threat to society. Are we all right? Is the stream buffering?
I know. I just heard and then the camera cut off. Usually that means the police have arrived.
No, I'm sorry. My camera just decided to freeze for some reason.
Oh no!
Literally the first time that's ever happened. So,
Teglin, you're going to say something, Teglin?
Yes, I have a question. Harris or Trump? Do you think either of them will introduce a Green New Deal, prior to the election day, or something approximating what's described as investment to clean energy and trying to, deal with climate change?
What do we think?
So for me, Teglin broke up a little bit. I heard something about a New Deal.
So Teglin asked whether or not, whether he thought that before the election, one of Harris or Trump will try and state one of their policies to be a Green New Deal. Will they have a green drive, a green set of policies around the environment to push forward as a goal for the election? Is that correct, Teglin? Is that what you were sort of asking then?
Right, exactly.
Oh, okay. I would say maybe Kamala will. I can't guarantee. She's been. I won't say her interviews have not been the best recently, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, what do you think, Angie and Cory? We'll pool ideas in a second, eh?
I think nothing's going to happen under either. I don't think either of them are going to be good for the environment. I mean,
would they say anything?
I don't see how Harris could be good for the environment if, you know, she's still supporting wars and she's not going to end like the military industrial complex at all, or the prison industrial complex, and that stuff, you know, pollutes our planet. So I don't think they're going to do anything. You know, the Democrats take the same, you know, donations like the Republicans do, but they just take less money, so they're cheaper. It's just pathetic.
Very true. Very true.
What do you think, Cory? Oh, so sorry about
that. That's all right. I don't know. Like, I don't see anybody doing anything to mitigate the climate issues that we're facing. I don't see them doing anything to deal with oil industry or like any of the actual structures in place that are undermining any climate action. So, I mean, I live in Canada, so we have all these new rules, carbon taxes and all this, and I see zero change in the way that corporations behave. And I see the emissions continuing to go up and forests continuing to burn and all this stuff. So yeah, as far as the environment, I don't see any change from either of those parties either, because Canada is like the US's lackey. We do what the US does.
That's
what
true.
They tell
that's
us.
Britain as well, right? That's us too.
Yeah.
No, that's Ireland with the UK too.
What to say? And just before I say something, what do you think, Teglin, personally? What's your take on that?
That's a great answers. I think it will be not in terms of methane and stopping natural gas from being used in new buildings and new construction, as well as more public transportation. If we can build more trains and, you know, around that issue, hopefully we can reduce the carbon footprint.
Yeah, and I think we've all sort of, and it's a bit depressing, really, isn't it? Because we all sort of have the same, like, we all think that things could be done quite easily, but know that there's a lack of, you know, want to actually make the serious step to changing things in the political system, because we know that it would take challenging the corporations, right? Challenging the military complex, challenging the institutions which have poured billions into the mechanisms which have caused the climate crisis in the first place. Like, I think, to go back to the question, like, obviously, because the Democrats have more academics and more people of a rational mind, shall we say, like, in their policymaking process, like, there's going to be naturally people who are saying, oh, maybe we should do a bit more green stuff. Maybe we should invest in solar panels and wind farms and stuff over another coal plant, you know, or buying another batch of oil from the Middle East and stuff. But because, as you said, Angie, they're both still attached to very hegemonic power structures. You know, they both are allies of Israel, who are dropping so many bombs on Palestine and other areas of Middle East, Lebanon, probably Iran. You know, the amount of stuff being spewed up by that, the harm done to the environment through that, like, is so damaging. Like, there was a whole video I saw of I can't remember where, but like, essentially a load of mangrove trees got just destroyed, right? Because when you bomb things, it makes the ground infertile. Like, you deposit, you get rid of the soil, and you've put just harmful agents into the ground. And so those mangroves and trees in general, which absorb so much water and anchor lots of the sediment, are gone, right? So when the tide comes in, all of a sudden it just washes and sweeps and destroys stuff, right? Which is part of the reason you know, re-greening areas is so crucial if we're going to actually, like, fix some of the environmental problems and take CO2 out of the atmosphere and make things more hospitable for wildlife and humans, which are part of wildlife. Let's not forget we are animals still, to live, right? So because both parties are fundamentally right-wing, one's obviously much more left than the other, but one is, they are both still believing in the capitalist system. They're unable to take the big step and say, actually, corporations need to change. It's not just down to the market anymore. We've got to actually actively change our practices and address that. Because if they did, boom, all the funding goes. The lobbyists, the people who fund the party and contribute billions, decide to leave and go to a different party, Republican Party in this case, and say, right, let's just go on board with this. The thing is, though, I feel like there is definitely a lot of public support for green policies. People, despite the efforts of right-wing people to claim, climate change is a myth, and all the money that's putting out we have a program called GB News in Britain, which is like Fox News but for Britain, but it's literally like it's awful. And their only role is to talk about right-wing things and try and make them seem like there's a genuine appetite for like all the horrid, like getting rid of the NHS and just having an American-style healthcare system and all those sorts of things. But the thing is, they're not popular. People want things to be done with the climate. People want environmental action now. And so if the Democrats if Kamala Harris did say, actually, we're going to be the first like big party in the West to say, no, climate change is real. We're going to do things right now to fix it. I reckon that would be massive. I think that could actually captivate a lot of people who are quite like alienated and fed up with the party. And of course,
I agree with that. But I think one thing we need to do with environmental issues is we need to talk about how it actually impacts people every day. The problem is a lot of these environmental issues, I think, are just done in such a hippie tone. And that's just really the vibe that I get from the Green Party. I like the Green Party, but yeah, it is too hippie. And I think they need to, expand beyond that because environmental issues, they affect us all. All of us will be affected. It doesn't matter what you believe. Nothing will save you.
Everybody. It affects everybody, and that's a difficult thing to understand for a lot of people, especially I'm just gonna say over here in the States, but also those affected by distant policies or policy making, like foreign policies, because the moment you don't realize this, that you like what you do, no matter what, we live in an interconnected world now, and because we live in an interconnected world, kind of stealing a phrase here from Frederick Douglass, is that what we do here in the States or in the UK or anywhere else in the first world is going to be felt across the world. Who we elect is going to be felt across the world. We no longer live in an isolated nation. So we need to actually be considerate of who is elected, who is like our policymakers, what our policymakers are doing, because it doesn't matter how small, is going to send ripples across the ocean to our neighbors, to our friends over there, to places that are forgotten, and even down and even the global South. They're going to send those ripples, and that is the reality of the world now. I mean, it was the reality of the world before, but now it's especially bad when you think about what has like Trump done in the past, for example.
That's so important. I think that's one of the big things for me as well. Like the consequences of a Trump victory would be an emboldened fascist movement the world over, right? Mm-hmm. Be it Bolsonaro trying to have his actions in Brazil, be it Nigel Farage and the growing far right movement in Britain. You've got Le Pen in France, and who's the person in charge of the AfD in Germany at the moment? I forget their name, but you've got Meloni in Italy. She's awful. There's so many. Putin, quite a big one, right? Like there's a big alarm bell, right? He's a friend of Trump, and so for as frustrating and as awful and as complicit, let's not forget too, by the way, the Democrats, for like in a just world, that higher organizing body of the Democrat Party would be in The Hague with Netanyahu, explaining why their weapons have gone towards the horrific actions in Palestine, right? I think what frustrates me is that there's all these crises happening, right? That what's happening in Palestine right now is a crisis. The rising far right in society is a crisis. And so all these crises need to be addressed at once, but they also shouldn't be like ranked up against each other. It's important to defeat Trump in this election and to absolutely make sure Republicans do not get control, make sure the far right do not have another victory. At the same time, it's important to end this genocide in the Middle East and make people accountable answer for what they've done. And that if that means taking Joe Biden, however, whatever his state is, however pleased we are for Democrats beating Republicans, taking those higher ups who were in the Biden administration, who enabled this to happen and continue to make blasé awful remarks to the Hague or whatever international arbitration court you want, and say, actually, what happened here? How is it that this was allowed to get to this state where Israel basically blows up bombs its way through whatever land it sees fit to claim for itself, right? Like, there needs to be something done. At the same time as beating fascists in elections, on the streets, in policy, in any form, to prevent our planet falling to the dogs. And that's an unfair phrase because dogs are actually quite nice and we shouldn't be put alongside the far right.
I mean, you're right though. That's the thing. Like, the problem is that the far right is I'm gonna say just like that sort of socialism or that nationalism is literally capitalism's last straw or last draw to maintain control of like the power that it has. Because it immediately is going, I'm gonna try to become the government as soon as or if not the government itself, because there's no money being made being the government, I'm going to help install people in power that are going to be sympathetic to, my business or my entity's needs, which is to continue to make money and be rich. Like, we've seen it happen before. It's happened numerous times now where regimes are overthrown and replaced with capitalist interests, or I guess foreign interests, I should say. A lot of it was capitalism, let's be honest. But also, like, we've seen it happen in Germany for a long time too, which is why I'm surprised that Germany's letting it happen again. You would think they'd be aware of like the signs, but that's just me.
It's that part of it's the liberal complacency, right? It's like there's that famous book, the famous quote, "The end of history." We've solved all the world's problems. We've made our perfect society, and now, barring a few, going outside the lines and a few little moments here and there, we've got to intervene. Society's just going to go along smoothly, and there's going to be no more events that are going to happen. And it's terrible because, of course, we know that ignores the capitalist decay, as you say, the crumbling of capitalism into fascism, the capitalist class saying we can no longer rely on the normal democracies to maintain our profits and our power. So we're going to now be authoritarian. We're going to now crack down on the marginalized and engage in nationalism and suppression of minorities, just like we did years ago, and we want to do again today. So part of it's that. Part of it, I think, is we can't ignore, obviously, if you look at Germany, the poorer parts of Germany are the eastern, former Eastern Bloc, East Germany parts, because when you reunited, obviously we went into a fully capitalist, Western nation. The West had all the resources, so you've got a lot of social deprivation. And what's perfect for fascists? Poor communities where you get non-white people moving in, immigrants, which are obviously everywhere because there's lots of cities in Germany. It's not as though the immigrants are just going to the poorer places, but because Germany is a big country, there's going to be a lot of people there anyway. That social change is pounced upon by right-wing people. The liberals and centrists don't do enough to protect the immigrants and protect the minorities. They don't say, actually, no, they're not the issue. They double down and say, oh, well, we're going to stop immigrants and we're going to stop people coming in and claiming benefits and all the other lies that right-wing people say. But they're still liberal. They still believe in welfare state and stuff. So they don't they don't do anything either way, right? They maintain, they don't go down the far right path fully, but they also don't fund the welfare system and they don't change anything. So
they become complacent. Yeah,
exactly, right. And so the German system, even though Germany's a better place to live than the UK in a lot of ways. I mean, I'd much rather have the condition. I mean, obviously they're still in the EU. Britain Brexited and went more right wing and has become much worse since then. But I'm sort of losing my train of thought here. Essentially, I feel like I always feel bad for some way for Germans because Germany It's a bit of a history thing as well. Like Nazi Germany, the bad part is the Nazi part. There were socialists, communists, Jewish people, LGBT people who fought and died to stop the Nazis taking over, and who resisted and who did so much to try and beat fascism, and actually set up a pretty decent country afterwards. And I feel like fascism is everywhere, regardless of geography. So whilst I get what you're saying, like obviously the Germans didn't learn their lesson, but equally didn't, right? Like no one else.
True. Like I was like trust me, I was there when the Berlin Wall fell. I understand. Like but that's just my point, right? Because it's one of those things that I sometimes say that a system that is not constantly under scrutiny, that is not constantly like being criticized and trying to work on itself, is going to fall into a form of complacency, a form of like almost authoritarianism, and because it will look to constantly perpetuate its power, to validate its existence, instead of going, we need people to validate our existence, so let's help people. Let's help our people specifically. Like that's the best way to be recognized in sort of a sense by the people. Because if you're just there and go, I exist, and I exist because I've always existed, you know, the divine right to rule, whatever they fucking call it nowadays, like you're just going to have a system that is going to be brutally oppressing people because they go like, hey, you should probably fix things.
And it's really like frustrating too, because for as much as there is of course a far right surge in lots of places, they aren't like, it's not like it's 50% plus, you know, complete support, unwavering loyalty to the fascist cause. It's like little pockets that take up space in government and have voices in the media that help them, but they don't speak for the majority of society. Most people don't go through their life thinking, oh my goodness, that trans person's invading my space. Oh, that black person's going to take my job in life. Like most people just get on with their life. It's the grind of capitalism not only tires out people, but it stops them actually being able to say and put into place what they want. There isn't the voice on, we have like loads of talk shows on national TV, right? But none of them will be saying there's a climate catastrophe, there's not money being put into the NHS, like, or if there are people who say that, they're like outnumbered by about a dozen conservative pundits who will say, oh, you're a leftist, you believe in everyone getting a free toothbrush, and nothing gets said about it. Like there's no, you know, it's an entirely manufactured, every step along the way that the capitalist system supports and uplifts far-right voices and pretends like they are some majority we have to listen to justify not funding anything left-wing and doing things that would actually, you know, help society and stop the problems that far-right exploits.
I agree with whoever's crying over there. I agree.
My apologies.
I don't think you need to apologize. It's all good.
Nothing to apologize for, man. This is
my stepdaughter sounds like having a meltdown, so
that's what I said. I just agree. I understand.
Yeah,
I feel like crying about politics a lot as well. So there's no.
And I think it's completely okay. I think politics, if we really get down to it, is quite literally just, it's super important, but it's stupid as hell, and we get disincentivized from paying attention to it.
I mean, you only have to look at any of the, like, I find there's so many, like, I think this is part of the reason I quite like doing like talks like this, right? Because the way that media cover, like mainstream media, covers so many issues is so ham-fisted and absurd, right? We have a show called Question Time in the UK, and like I remember relatives said, oh yeah, watch this program, it's, you know, it's great, you like politics, and you can watch this and enjoy it. And I remember watching it and thinking, this is such an awful like the way they execute this. One moderator who sits around with a scripted questions that they've picked out from the audience pre like the show. They've got to make sure everyone gets a voice, but of course there's always a conservative MP there. There's always like a journalist from like one of the 4 or 5 right-wing like newspapers we have in the country. You might have one Labour MP. You have a Labour MP, but there'll be like some, I don't know, Wes Streeting type who is just like almost as right-wing as any of the Conservatives. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll have like a left-leaning journalist on who'll make the point that like actually there is some pretty big problems, but they'll be shouted down and interrupted and nothing's done about it. and then the show ends after an hour with like, and of course there's like a like Nigel Farage, I think, made the most appearances, like between Brexit happening and him being elected as an MP. He made so many appearances on there, saying the same unverified right-wing talking points every single week, never getting called out. The host of the show, I think she is either married to or is set to inherit like a massive, she's like a connected like corporate person. It's just at every level, like the way our media operates is so disingenuous, and that's what you say, Raptor, right? And Angie, and we all said, really, like people are so disillusioned and hateful towards this system because it sucks. It's not representative of what people want at every step.
Oh, you're right, though. That's the thing. It sucks it sucks so much because it's essential to our lives, but it also ruins our lives. If people would want to work regardless of if they were getting paid or not, if we had all of our basic needs covered, no one's going to sit around jerking off all day. Okay, people are going to sit around and jerk off all day. Yes, but there are going to be more people than more than anything else. People are going to want to be productive in their communities.
Yeah. And it would be stuff that matters, right? Like it wouldn't be like call centers or like
no, it'd be fulfilling and enriching, and not enriching to yourself, not enriching a boss.
Yeah.
It'd be people doing art, people doing farming, people doing gardening. Yeah. People will find passions in things like architecture, and they will do that for free and do it. Well, they'll probably do it to enrich themselves first, and then look like they'll have their neighbors go, "Hey, man, that's an awesome house. Can I help? Can I help with that?" And then can we make me one? And can we make our other neighbors one? Like that. That is human nature is plastic to the social pressures that we have. It's plastic to our environments. So when the social pressure we have is needing to meet our basic needs, we have to focus on that.
Yeah. I think that's so. Oh, go ahead, Cory. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, between the number of books that I'm reading that talk about like early society, like there was no profit incentive when people first started settling together, right? Like they just did it and helped each other and built houses and like lived together, and they worked fine. And then now we have a credit score.
Yeah. Which is another horrifically predatory thing.
It's all true. Like I can even say from like personal experience, like I had trouble getting a job after I finished university because I studied journalism. And, when you're looking for journalism jobs in a country that you're not from, obviously there's going to be a bias against you unless you have a lot of experience, because you need to know the local area, and they usually prefer locals for that, even though that stuff can be learned. So I was just stuck writing, and I just kept writing. I wrote about classic rock, and that's really what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a politics journalist or do the news. I wanted to just write about music. So I just wrote, all about classic rock on my blog, crazyonclassicrock.com, the diversity of classic rock. And I just did that just for the enjoyment of it. And I think, that's why I wrote my book, Crime of the Century, Classic Rock and True Crime. And I was just like writing it because I enjoyed it. But then, everybody is just, nobody's immune to the capitalist bug. And, you get that in your head. Oh, it's all about, making money. And when you tie everything to making money, and everything's, based on survival and money, you forget why you do things. And that's kind of what I felt, for ages there about my own writing. I'm like, oh, I'm not really making a lot of money off of it. But really, it shouldn't be about making the money. It should be about just enjoying it and doing it for the sake of it. But,
exactly, right.
Capitalism nobody's immune to it. And I just want it to stop. And I don't know how to make it stop. But I hope one day it does end.
We live in hope, right? I think that's so important. Like it's such a capitalism's such a drain on the mind, because like you say, right? Like the back of everyone's like process in their day is like, oh, will my bills be paid? Will I have enough money to get through this week, this month? What's going to happen to my house if I don't? Am I even going to have a house if I'm not doing X, Y, Z to be productive? And that's not healthy, because art is something we should be enjoying, and just if people have the space and time and resources to be able to do,
I'll be right back. Give me a sec.
No problem, Raptor. Like if people want to be able to do as they enjoy, right? that makes for a better, more productive world. And I think what you said about your writing, Angie, is very similar to what because like so I do away from my sort of politics and my studies and my athletics and stuff. I write about my favorite football team, which is soccer for everyone here. I'm the only Brit here. Soccer to all of you, but I write about my team and I enjoy writing about it, and people like reading my stuff. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like the time, sometimes I find myself thinking, well, what am I going to do with this after my degree? Am I going to do anything further with my sports journalism? Is it going to pay me anything? Am I going to actually do anything with it? And I think, well, no, people enjoy this. People have said to me they read my stuff and like coming to the match comments and saying, oh, I liked your perspective on the game. And that is valuable in itself. Just doing something that someone else has taken, found joy and appreciation for. And I think one of the things that really sticks with me, like how with our current sort of wave of pop culture, is when like a film comes out or a piece of art and the box office starts and it's not immediately like made 100 million in the first week and everyone says, oh, what a flop, what a failure, can't believe they did that. And I think what a terrible way to view a piece of work that someone's written and filmed and shown up for and really put time into, just because it didn't, I don't know, satisfy the corporate goals of the CEOs.
That's what I've written about on my blog. Actually, I have a blog post all about that, is about the greatest flops in rock and roll. And in that blog post, I go through like things that were initially commercial flops, like they didn't sell very well. And, they're actually really good. I mean, how many people listen to or read a thing, doesn't indicate its quality. And I hate when people say, oh, are you jealous of J.K. Rowling's writing skills because I call her out on her transphobia? It's like, no, I don't care about her writing skills. Yeah, I'd like to have the money, that's for sure. But it's not because I want to be the richest person or anything like that. I just want to have security like anyone else. Like, that's really what brings down my mood, is just life is just so unstable unless you have, wealth or generational wealth, everything could just fall down all at once. And that's really the startling thing. And I think that's what keeps, people out of the arts. I mean, we notice nowadays that it's back to how it used to be, prior to the mid 20th century, that, the arts is just dominated by rich people because that's all who can afford to do it, especially when internships are never paid and, the arts are just undervalued. That's just a huge problem in our society. I want to, see, artists from working class backgrounds flourish. I want to see them, rise up and, actually be able to make a living from it.
Yeah, I mean, Angie's blog, you can, I've linked it in the description. I'll show it. Oh, that's the wrong one. That's the
Discord message.
Here we are. So I will certainly be reading about that because it sounds really interesting.
I'll send it to you. I'll send the link. Yeah, I'll definitely send that to you.
I mean, my taste in music is very spread out. Like I've got no like one set genre. Like I'm quite lucky because I like bits of all of it. So yeah, I'll be giving that a read.
I think two of my favorite examples from that blog of like really quality stuff that didn't sell very well. I think the Velvet Underground Nico is a really good one because everybody knows that album cover because it has the Andy Warhol banana on it and it just says Velvet Underground Nico, and then the banana would just peel off like a sticker when you buy the vinyl of it. But that's one example. I think the other one is just a whole artist's work, and that is Nick Drake. And he only released like 3 albums before he died, and they're all amazing. But like he never got fame, and that just devastated him. And I think just that, you work so hard, you put your heart and soul into it, and then only for no one to care about it. It's not even always about the money. It's, just getting noticed. And I hate when people say, oh, you're being an attention seeker, but it's like, that's human nature. People want to connect with other people, even if you're the most introverted person in the world.
Well, and like you were saying before too, like we live under capitalism, which is, it's also an attention economy, right? Like we need to be involved with, we need people to see what we're doing or else we feel like we're not doing anything.
Yeah, this is why I say like once you have like your basic needs met, you can engage in things that are more fulfilling than just going and working at your minimum wage job, taking a shit on the boss's time because you don't have enough time to do it on your own, like and not having any hobbies because you have to work like 6 jobs to even get to that point,
Yeah.
Like you guys don't know my situation. It's fine. Like I lost a job that paid enough. It paid enough for me to enjoy my actual life day to day before having to like scrape by working as a school teacher for a year because that was the only job that was hiring me, or the only job that hired me after a year on unemployment.
Yeah.
Like it was a fucked situation. I had to ask for help. I had to engage in community organizing to get help, because even if I worked that school job and another job, I still wouldn't have had enough to cover my basic needs. That is how unstable the system is.
Which is disgusting, right? Because like a school teacher is literally in charge of raising the next generation, raising up the next set of kids to function the society.
It's a criminally underpaid job, and
yeah, absolutely. Oh no, don't forget the fact that we have to buy our own supplies too. So like I'm spending money that I do not have to get snacks and food and school supplies for kids at this honestly very privileged school, but at the same time they didn't pay me enough to do all that.
And they don't like reimburse you, which is really messed up. And I think like what I was going to say about unemployment, I think one of the biggest problems is it's a feedback loop. You know, if you've been unemployed for long enough, it's a feedback loop, and nobody wants to hire you because you haven't been hired, and nobody's hiring you because, you know, so many people are out of work, and it's just devastating just thinking about that.
Yeah. I mean, we have I'm not a qualified teacher, Raptor, but I've been a teaching assistant for a few years, and it's what working at a school is really. I mean, I've always been quite left wing, but it really just opens your eyes to like the staggering inequalities and injustices of society, like be it in the direct lives of the kids, be it in the slow turning gears of the state to actually get resources to the schools and get the stuff in place to help the children, or just the disgusting, like disparate states of existence that the wealthiest in society get to enjoy next to, literally, in many cases, right next to the educational establishments that are responsible for raising children through an underfunded and broken system, right? And I think going back to that art point as well, like all these kids go through life and they start and they have all these amazing, you know, wonderful ideas for where you want to go. And most of it is like nice things, right? Like I want to draw, I want to play sports, I want to have fun and make music. And so much of that is just taken from them because it's seen as unprofitable or unviable. Well, you can't be an artist because there's millions of singers. You don't make a career in that. You can't play sport. There's only so many players who make it to the top. You just stop. Just do something else. You know, you can't do this. You can't do that. And that tells children subtly and directly that their only future is tied to getting great grades, going off to whatever institution, doing really well there, and going into that. And that's, of course, a great avenue for lots of people. I think it's fantastic that everyone's got the choice to be able to go through education to that extent. But not everyone is going to learn maths, English, science at the same speed. And so there needs to be a society that says, okay, well, not everyone's going to be able to just go straight into a STEM course. So let's let them explore their enjoyments and let's let them grow into society as a person with the same needs and wants provided and supported and treated like an actual person. But instead, it's like, you know, you don't fit that path. Okay, well, get a minimum wage job, be a cog in the system. Otherwise, you're on your own. And even if you get that job, that's still going to be enough because we don't pay enough for you to afford your rent when you know, and like that mentality is so, the reason why so many young people are, you see like mental health issues are massive in, I mean, I'm Gen Z, I'm closer to 30 now than 20, which I'm realizing is, you know, I don't know how I feel about that yet, but I'm still, you know, school was not that long ago for me. So, you know, I remember being 18 and just, you know, having, from being like, so I used to love school. And then you get to 18 and you're jaded, exhausted. I went to university for a year, had a middling time, you know, some of it was good, but I wasn't in a place to you know, plow forward with it. Took some time off, worked in a school for a little bit. That led to me starting my new degree that I'm now in a second year of. And it's really let me see just how up close and personal, how broken the current way we're handling education and kids and just our society as a whole is, because there needs to be more done for everyone to be included and be able to enjoy society. And on a fundamental level, our capitalist, you know, late capitalist hell economy just isn't doing that. And we're capable of so much more.
We really are. We really are. Like we live in the era of like the most abundance, but it is through artificial scarcity that we have to suffer. Like, and that's the best way I can describe it right now.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So actually, I have a question for everybody else, and I'm curious. So with the looming election between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, if Trump succeeds, if he wins for whatever reason, legit or not, like what are things that, or what are defenses that people could potentially have in place for them? Like for minorities, for anybody who's disenfranchised in like the States and across the world, actually, what are some potential ideas for them to defend themselves to be able to survive like the next 4 years?
You'd like to go first.
I can. Okay, I can do it on something, right? Some of the stuff that you can actively get is be armed or learning how to do self-defense, because there are and have like records of like roving violent gangs with Trump. Remember, with COVID, there was a spike in anti-Asian hatred or hate crimes like during that period. COVID's still going, but during that period specifically, there was a spike in anti-Asian hate crimes. Another thing, I'll default to this, which is mutual aid.
Yeah.
Find your community, be together, like discuss defense strategies if you need to. Don't vote for Donald Trump. Don't vote for Jill Stein, please. Don't waste your fucking vote. Every voice matters. But also like engaging in like the mutual aid. Like I said, coordinating.
Geek agrees with you.
Yeah. Oh, hey.
Geek.
Nice to meet you.
In the chat. They are fantastic. But yeah, they agree with you. Mutual aid. What do the rest of us think?
Yeah, I was going to say mutual aid. I think pretty much. I think we're on the same wavelength. I think the only thing I would disagree on is, I support people voting for the Green Party, because if the Green Party gets enough votes, they'll get national funding. It's messed up that they don't get funding unless they get a number of votes, and it's a chicken or egg situation. But yeah, I definitely support people who are going to vote for the Green Party, definitely. But that's just, I have a different approach, I guess. But otherwise, yeah, I think definitely the guns and the mutual aid are very important.
I mean, a different approach is always good, right? That's why I'm asking.
I think the concern with the Greens is just that because of the nature of first past the post, like when parties compete, and yeah, you're right, it is very unfair and unjust, but the votes that don't go towards the main parties, like they don't
just get thrown.
I think
exactly right.
But what I would say is I never see the Republicans saying don't vote for the Libertarians. I've never really seen them talking much about the Libertarians at all.
It's because the Libertarians fall in line and tend to support right-wing politics, because the right wing panders to them in regards to like, oh yeah, guess what? We voted for the party of small government.
But like in the presidential election, like if enough Republicans vote for Libertarian, doesn't that mean the Democrats could win? That's the thing like I'm thinking about.
Yeah, like in Canada, we have... I was just going to say, in Canada, we have the People's Party and we have the Conservatives. And when they fight, then we all win.
Yeah, like Raptor says, I think the right tend to, because more right-wing parties are interested in having power above all else, right? Like they want power, they want the resources of society going to their causes, the army, corporations, prisons. So they'll more easily say, okay, well, Republicans going to win here, so let's just go and vote for him. We want Trump to win. We're not that fussed. We'll vote for Trump. Whereas because on the left, there's more of a moral stand. Like there's legitimate reasons that the Democrats should be criticized and should not. Like a person who says Kamala Harris and her party are not doing a good job. Like there's a good stance behind that, right? So that fractures left-wing voters between wanting a pragmatic solution of just voting for Democrats or wanting an alternative, voting for a Green Party, which, Green's in the name. It sounds like, they want actual change and stuff. But the concern is that splinters the vote, which when we are in a first past the post system, doesn't like if a party on top is Republican, it doesn't matter that Dems and Greens got more combined. It like the count just goes to the person who wins. And so from a purely pragmatic point of view, there is that criticism. And I suppose as well, Jill Stein, there are some question marks over her standing as a person. There's the stuff with Russia. There's the notion that the party don't do that much outside of election year. And then when it comes to election year, they're very happy to make a lot of noise, but don't actually engage in much of the stuff outside of it, which I don't think, I think it's tricky because there's lots of people who do not want anything to do with Democrats, but do a lot of the community outreach and aid and cooperation in society that is good. I think it's a tricky, complex issue, but in terms of pragmatically beating the Republicans and stopping fascists from winning political power in a massive way, there is some imperative to organize behind, or at least vote for the party with the best chance of beating them, which unfortunately is, the Democrat Party. But to go back to Raptor's initial question in terms of, sorry, Raptor?
Oh, I said, yeah, that's unfortunately the truth. Like, there are other parties in the United States, they just have no power. Because even we do have like a People's Socialist Party. Cornel West is currently, I think he's aligned to it, but it has no power. It's a two-party system. If you're not part of one of the two parties, you're not gonna vote, or you get AstroTurf like Jill Stein did, or whatever.
And I think as well, like if we want to have a better system in the future, we need to have a party that doesn't want to end democracy.
It's true. Anything that it's like we should really have rules against people who want to like limit democracy in any way.
Because like to me, like go ahead, sorry, Raptor.
No, like that. And if you like run on, if those are in your policies and like listed policies, you should be instantly disqualified.
Because to me, the timeline that America finally gets rid of the Electoral College and has like a proportional representation and ditches the outdated way of doing it, isn't the time like that. You can't have Trump coming in and winning, which I think unfortunately means we have to engage with the conditions we've got at the moment, which is awful. And I hate that there's such a blatant undemocratic process happening to decide a massive election, but we're stuck with it, right? So got to play the game until we can change the game, which is a disgusting thing to say as a left-wing person, but
oh god,
yeah.
I like playing games, but not like this. Turn all the way down. What the hell?
But yeah, to answer your question, Raptor, mutual aid, absolutely. There's a fantastic example in London, in the capital of the UK. Our immigration services, under various conservative governments, and sadly under this very right-wing Labour government, have massively targeted immigrants, especially since Brexit. They're trying to increase the number of deportations, trying to target people who have actually been here for a very long time over documentation and just get rid of them. So in lots of social housing in London, immigration services will come to the door, knock on the door, say, right, we're here to get you, basically, here to deport you. However, the vans they take them in, there was a really famous example of this in a housing estate. The people of that estate just came and just all sat around and stood in front of the van, and the van was trapped. They couldn't move. And they stayed there for hours, and they had to say, okay, right, well, we can't just do this today then. And they let the person go. And so examples like that show that even though the state has power, and definitely, even though when right-wing actors use their power, it can be really devastating, there's more of us than them. There's more people who believe in progressive ideals than in conservative ones. And when we organize together, we can't be stopped. Unless they want to unless they want to start killing. Of course, in some cases, they will do.
Yeah,
but at the same time, there is some power in saying, no, what are you going to do? We're saying, no, we're going to sit in front of your van and you're not going to drive this unless you run us all over. And it's not just going to be one of us, it's going to be the whole block. So if we organize with each other, if we get our communities engaged in things through mutual aid, through charity runs, and I don't mean inviting the big charity, and I mean literally the principle of being charitable to one another and speaking to each other and linking together, and doing this across institutions. So not just I think one of the issues sometimes is people can only view their own place of work or place of socialization as a place. If you link together across social backgrounds, there's a lot of people who can organize. And suddenly the like officials who show up and say like, oh, well, we're going to do this now, are like, well, no, because there's more people, working people here to say, no, we're not letting this happen, than can be just moved along with a law or a decree. And that slows down the right-wing mechanisms and lets people make tangible change. On top of that as well, I think I always like when I remember some of the writing people I've spoken to have always been very quick to be like, get a gun and just shoot people and stuff when it comes to...
yeah, what the fuck is with that? Oh my God. Genuinely, what the fuck is with that?
There's a very like violent tendency to just like the most instant like vigilante stuff just comes to mind straight away. Absolutely, I don't advocate for that, but I do think it's important to try and get like fitness and like group exercise. And like, for instance, I whilst I'm not like some big fighter or anything, like I do strength and conditioning and athletics and stuff, and so I try and stay fit. I think that's quite important because it's always good to be physically doing things on top of the things we're doing, to be prepared for hard times, and be prepared for if, say, unfortunately, people on the far right come and want to beat up people. There's a lot of people who are marginalized, be it through gender, sexuality, disability, who need the support of other people to, we need each other's backs, right? We've got to be vigilant and active against people who want us dead. So I think that's important as well. And on top of that, making our voices heard. Like, for as silly as it will sound, because I'm not trying to say I'm like some big platform like speaking for the masses or anything, but we see each other visibly if we're talking to each other and having these conversations. And when a lot of people have these conversations, actually there's visibility. There's a great author called Samuel Delaney. He's got a middle name which is really annoying, but I can't remember it now, but he spoke about how that when he was a young gay man coming up through a time of lots of homophobia, one of the things that was quite liberating was just seeing how many gay people there were in society. It wasn't some like aberrant disorder. It was actually just a way of life, a way of existing for a lot of people. And so when they started organizing together, actually there were a lot of people in that movement that forced society to recognize them beyond the minimal discrimination they had them before. And so similarly, left-wing organization and conversation and discord will have an impact. People can't ignore social change. And if they do say, okay, well, we are just fascists, we are going to like do stuff negatively, then if all those people are together, there's a chance to actually fight back, right? There's a chance to actually say, okay, well, you're going to attack us, we're going to attack you back. Like the far right groups love to film videos of themselves marching around with like, the waving their flags and in a big group because it's good optics, right? Well, there's more of us than them, and the optics of surrounding them and showing we're a force to be reckoned with actually is something that works, because they don't show up again and they leave you alone. They vanish. They stick back. They put out their tweets saying, "Oh, the left protest and they beat people up and they don't like it," like because they know they can't be in the street waving Nazi flags if they're
so much for the
opposed.
Tolerant left.
Exactly, right. There's so many things that can be done. So even if Trump wins, which is obviously going to be a massively bad thing, it's not game over. Don't feel as though the world is going to end, because there's always, as long as there's one human being who believes that things can be better, there's always going to chance things can be better.
That's the big thing, is that you gotta drink that hopium. You gotta smoke the hopium, because if you don't, you will fall into despair. Trust me, I've been in this state for a long time now. It's literally, I got to focus on one thing at a time. Otherwise, it's over. It's over, son.
Exactly right.
Like you crumble away.
We're coming close to the 2-hour mark, which, whilst I'm not going to end it straight away, I am working and I've got university tomorrow and stuff. So I do want to slowly, it's a bit later in the UK, so I do want to slowly come to a somewhat of a conclusion. So were there any other thoughts that we had about any of this that we'd like to share?
I'll keep yapping, no worries. Actually, yeah, kind of a counterpoint to what I previously said about defending against Trump. How do you guys feel about how do you guys feel about the understanding that it is difficult for people to organize nowadays because we're so atomized at work? I mean, obviously there's ways around it. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a reason the Black Lives Matter protests were so massive.
Yeah.
Even though we were still atomized about it, you know.
It's tough, right? Because between your work life, the hyper individualism of the ideologies that are around the United States, and then on top of it, like everybody's got to worry about, you know, surviving. It's tough to organize people, but I know there are really good like mutual aid groups like Cooperation Tulsa and whatnot in various places, and that are doing amazing things, and they're growing all the time. So there is not just hope, I guess. There's like actually stuff going on and being built that can be beneficial in the future, regardless of who wins the election.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, Angie and Teglin, what do you two think? What should be? What's your opinion on that?
I'm definitely not feeling optimistic or hopeful about the future.
I mean, that's fair. Neither am I, but I gotta do what I can.
I don't think there's anything that would make me want to move back to the US. I don't think anything would make me move back.
We don't even visit the US anymore.
You know what? That's completely fair. Wait, am I the only one that lives in the US right now?
I'm from the US.
You're from the US. Are you there right now?
I'm in the United States, yes.
Oh, okay, cool.
I'm definitely anyone who's never been to America. I've got a few cousins there, but I've got no. I've never set foot on the US soil.
Good.
So unless you are of the opinion that the UK is basically a 51st state, in which case, I guess I'm.
I do think of the UK as like the America of Europe, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
The originator.
Yeah.
But even our flag, you know, the blue, white, and red, it's quite. I don't know what we all think of our national flags, but I've always been a little. I tend to prefer some of the European ones to the Union flag.
Look, there are some variations of the American flag that I enjoy. Not a whole lot, but some.
But no, I suppose actually, Teglin, you go first. Actually, what do you think of Raptor's question?
I mean, I've been here my whole life and lived through 9/11, and of course what happened in the aftermath of 9/11 was equally as tragic as the people that died in the towers and in the planes. But I look at that event and see it as really testing the United States and seeing how we would respond to a tragedy like that.
Very poorly.
Yeah. But you can't blame the firefighters that actually ran up into a burning building.
True. You can't blame them. They are genuine heroes. Like the
firefighters are heroes.
Response, yeah. But everything else, like up to and then beyond 9/11, was literally handled terribly. We were warned about a potential attack. The president did nothing, and then it happened, and then still did nothing, and then launched a war that lasted until 2021. It was old enough to drink by the time it was done. There were people going into the military whose family or whose father was, or whoever's like parent was there initially. Like, that's fucked up, man.
So I was shaking my head at disgust of what you said, not because I disagree, by the way. It's fine. I realized I saw Cory nodding. I was thinking, oh no, they're going to think that I'm a pro-Bush. It's interesting because I actually don't have any memory of 9/11 happening. I was 2 years old when 9/11 happened. So if someone says like New York to me, I don't picture the World Trade Center there. If someone talks about World Trade Center attacks, like I only imagine, I don't have any like recollection of it happening. So for me, the world has always been in the malaise that you guys must have all seen, sort of feel live, right? Like airport security has always been as overdramatic and ridiculous as it's always been. Everyone in the West has always been obsessed with policing and state surveillance and the idea we've got to be secure on our borders and all of that other nonsense. There's just, and I think that as a turning point as well, as a moment in history that right-wing people are able to just capture as like, okay, this is where we start putting in, the Patriot Act and the mass surveillance of the people and the curbing of freedoms in the name of state security and the ramping up of incarceration, all these, clear directions, which, to go back to your question, Raptor, make it very hard to organize because, of course, in a country that cracks down on workers' striking rights, protections, with austerity, with the cost of living crisis, all these things that make it harder to function outside of the working, eating, sleeping cycle that everyone sort of is to some degree stuck on. That makes it harder. However, at the same time, there is a kernel of hope because whilst a human being we don't live in the Matrix, we don't live in some computer simulation. So there is that visceral feeling of negativity. There is something wrong. There's something not right with our society. That is a mutual feeling that millions feel across the world, billions even. And if that can be tapped into, if that can be shared and discussed and openly thought about, there's always a chance of protest, be it Black Lives Matter, Palestine. I believe there are more movements that are yet to happen. If Trump were to win, I feel like there would be protests. There would be things to happen even before January from the left to show there's something not right with this. There's always hope. I firmly believe I'm an optimist. For as much as there's pessimism in the world, and for as much as Angie, I completely share the same lack of worry that things are getting like worse and worse. It's part of me that's always going to believe that the win is around the corner. Maybe that's just because I'm of my sort of just how I am. Like maybe I'm naive, but I think there is something waiting for us that's better than what we have now. And I want to be around to see it.
I'm hoping to be. Who knows? The future's a fickle bitch.
Indeed. Maybe Trump will watch this podcast, this video, and we'll
he'll come to them specifically just for us.
Yeah, and then he'll put everybody in this stream on a list.
Hey, I don't want to hear from Owen McDonald. It's been a little while.
No, indeed. Well, we're approaching the 2-hour mark. I'll say from now, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to the three of you. I can't count. I'm losing my maths. I should have gone back to school. No? I was going to say the 5 of you as well, including myself. It's a pleasure speaking to me. No, it's been great having the 4 of you all on. It's been lovely hearing your voices, and it's been a real privilege to be able to speak to people from across different sections of society. Right, like it's. I think one of the, as I said at the start, right, one of the great things about living today is that we can just have a conversation like this just on the fly. I don't have to fly to a conference on the other side of the planet or across an ocean to come and see you all. So no, it's been fantastic. I'm certainly hoping to do more of these before the election because there's lots of people that have similar thoughts, and it'd be great to see as the election gets closer what everyone's feeling and thinking of. Make sure I've put in the description all the wonderful people here, their channels, their blogs, all of the Twitch accounts, all the stuff we can think of. Be sure to go and follow all of them. I'll certainly be reading that blog from Angie because I like my music. Was there anything anyone wanted to say before I ended the stream?
Just thanks for inviting me. I had a lot of fun talking to all of you.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you all for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right then, take care all. Make sure you stay hydrated and see you all soon.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, wonderful.